At the foundation of any culture through history, there's always different layers, and on the very bottom of the cultural foundation, there is a so-called creation myth, a story, a belief of where we come from, what is the meaning of life, and what happens after we die. Now, the oldest stories of the creation myth come from Babylonian history as well as Egypt, and currently we have a widespread creation myth in the monotheistic world that essentially includes Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And then you've got other polytheistic religions like Hinduism or Buddhism. But essentially, all of them describe a structure of where we come from, what is the meaning of life, and what happens after we die. Obviously, nowadays, you also have so-called atheists of different sorts who reject the postulates of religion altogether, and they might believe, for example, in the Big Bang or whatever is, let's say, non-traditionally religious. For example, that, yeah, it was just the Big Bang, things happened, it was all random accident. We're here, there's no point in life, there's no meaning to life. When we die, we just turn into, dust, 6 feet under, and that's the end of it. So they reject the belief system that there is a higher power beyond ourselves. Um, Now, we can all debate which is good or bad in a given sense, but let me ask you something. Just for the sake of argument, currently in this world in 2023, there are more than 8 billion people. We all understand to a degree the problems in human nature, um, the issues that brings when we behave according to our, let's say, the darker side of human nature. Humans have, through history, caused a lot of evil, a lot of suffering, but we also have that good side, which is there to help, support, build together, and prosper. So if we look at the world through a lens of, let's imagine all of these 8 billion people would either be agnostics, they're not believing in anything supernatural, no religion, we're here just as a result of a random accident in the universe. And there's no meaning to life, and after we die, there's nothing. There's no such a thing as soul or consciousness that would be separate from the body. And everybody gets to live their life according to their own judgments, their own morals, their own belief systems that could come from anywhere. So theoretically, you would have 8 billion plus people who view the world differently to an extent. And whatever they do in their life, oh well, there's no judgment day, there's no punishment, there's no reward after you die. And let's imagine a second scenario where you have 8 billion plus people who behave according to the traditional Christian um, lifestyle. And just to make it a bit more simple, let's just pinpoint the 10 commandments that they would adhere to, and let's point out the principles of the gospel in the New Testament. And just those two things would be the guiding principles of the lives of these 8 billion plus people on the planet. Nothing else. So forget about denominations like Catholicism or Protestantism or any traditions that come from these specific denominations. Just consider the Ten Commandments and the guiding principles of the gospel. And people would try their best during their lives to adhere to these principles. So, as now we have these two groups, the atheists or agnostics, and these, let's say, traditionally um, Christian belief system followers. And both of them live their lives according to what they find to be the best practices in life and best life choices. Now, everybody knows that when you have different belief systems, they exist because nobody can prove in a scientific way where do we come from. The Big Bang is a theory, so we don't know. It's currently widespread that a portion of the people believe that, but we cannot know for sure. If you think you know for sure, prove it. You can't do that. What is the meaning of life? We don't know. Nobody can prove what it is, essentially. So it is based on a belief system that we hold either consciously or unconsciously. Unfortunately, for a lot of people, they're not conscious about it, and they just haven't thought it through. They haven't researched it. So if you ask them, like, what is your belief system founded upon? They don't know. Probably their family, their culture, media, what other people think. So they're not necessarily consciously, they haven't formed a basis of their belief system. And then you ask somebody like, what happens when you die? You might have different answers, or heaven, hell, nothing, um, or whatever. But whatever you believe in, you cannot prove it. Nobody can prove objectively what happens when you die. Is it the end? Who knows? Is there going to be something else in the life thereafter? Who knows? So it is all based on a belief system, one way or the other, that you cannot prove. So now that we have these two groups, these atheists, 8 billion plus people on the planet, who live according to their own morals and standards and whatever they consider good or bad for their own lives, and then as a result for the whole planet. And then we've got this group of, let's say, traditionally Christian belief system, Ten Commandments, the gospel. Now we don't know, and neither group can prove whether their choice in life is good or bad. It's just a belief system. Neither group knows or can prove what happens when they die. But for the sake of simplicity, let's say there's two different options of what happens when they die. Either the group of agnostics, atheists, they are correct. And when they die, when we die, nothing happens. It's the end. So in scenario one, the atheists win because they were right. Now, what is the prize for them of being right? Nothing really, because it just ends. So who cares, right? Now, in the second scenario, those who have those traditional Christian beliefs, those happen to be correct, that there will be a judgment day and you go to heaven or you go to hell. Who is in that second scenario winning? Well, pretty clearly those who live their lives according to that Christian tradition, because they were living in a way that would provide them a higher probability of said eternal life instead of eternal damnation, right? So if everybody was living according to the atheist belief system and we all die, nobody's winning, right? If we all were living according to the Christian beliefs and they are right, then clearly the atheist, on a balance of probably are not winning, but the Christians are. But in either case, even if the atheists were right and we die and there's nothing, think about how the planet would look like if everybody was acting according to the Ten Commandments and the Gospel, and how we're treating each other on the planet versus 8 billion people just coming up with their own belief system. Some people might be good people, sure, but some people might be like, well, we're gonna die anyway, so I'll just do whatever I please. They might be hedonistic, they might be sadistic. Who cares, right? They don't care. So such a society based on, well, there's no life thereafter, you might probably think that that would include more evil or chaos because people don't have to care. They're not held accountable when they die. But in the Christian tradition, and this also applies to Judaism and Islam, but just in a different sense, you're held accountable in the life thereafter by the way that you chose to live during your lifetime. So that accountability in and of itself would probably make these people act more responsibly, care more for each other, love each other more. Let's say break 10 commandments, which are generally considered as a good guidance to having a good and peaceful society. Yeah, society would function better on a balance of probability. So if I ask you this question, does it make sense to live your life according to atheism? And how, if everybody did live their lives according to those beliefs, how would society and the planet look like as a result? Versus living through a classical Christian tradition. So, yeah, what would you do?